It is the oldest continuous institution on Earth. It is older than the samurai, older than the Magna Carta. For roughly 1,500 years, the Japanese throne has passed down an unbroken line through wars, famines, and the fall of empires all around it. And today, the survival of that entire 15th century line depends on one person, a single 19-year-old. This isn't the result of a war or a plague. It comes from two decisions, each of which, on the day it was made, looked completely reasonable. Put them together, and they quietly removed the one thing every institution needs to survive its own members: a spare. Here is where things actually stand. The line of succession to Emperor Naruhito now contains exactly 3 people: his brother, Crown Prince Akashino, who is 60, Akashino's son, Prince Hisahito, who is 19, and an uncle, Prince Hitachi, who is 90. 2 of those 3 are near the end of their lives, which leaves one young man, Hisahito, to carry a 1,500-year line into the next generation entirely on his own. There is, of course, another candidate. Emperor Naruhito has a child, Princess Aiko, now in her 20s, and a prominent public figure. But under Japan's imperial house law, Aiko cannot inherit the throne. For one reason, she is a woman, and it goes further. If she marries an ordinary citizen, as the law stands, she doesn't just stay out of the line. She loses her royal status altogether and leaves the family. This month, in July of 2026, the government is passing a set of changes meant to fix the shortage. But notice how it chooses to fix it. Rather than allowing a woman to inherit, the plan is to bring men back in, to let the family adopt male descendants of branches that were cut off decades ago. In every version of the new law, the throne remains closed to Aiko. The question worth asking is not whether that's fair. It's why the shortage exists at all. It is tempting to file this under tradition, an old country, an old rule, slow to change, but that skips the interesting part, because tradition doesn't explain the timing. This same throne ran for over 1,000 years without ever running this dry, so something changed. And when you look closely, the shortage isn't really about who is allowed on the throne. It's about a design problem that has nothing to do with monarchies at all. The same problem that can sink a company, a database, or a power grid. It is what engineers call a single point of failure, and Japan built one by accident in 2 steps. Start with what the throne actually is, stripped of the ceremony. It is a system with one job: to carry a single role, unbroken, across centuries, which means it has to survive the death of every single person who ever holds it. Engineers have a word for a system like that. It is critical. And the first rule of anything critical is that you never let it depend on a single component. You keep spares, you build in redundancy. A plane has more than one engine for exactly this reason. For most of its history, the Japanese throne had that redundancy. Around the main family sat a whole set of collateral branches, cousins, second cousins, side houses, a deep bench of eligible heirs. When a main line ran out of sons, and it did more than once, the system reached into that bench. Japan has even had 8 reigning empresses, women who held the throne to bridge exactly these gaps. Each was herself born of the male line, and each handed the throne onward to a male heir, keeping that line intact. The bench was real, and it was used. Now look at the 2 steps that removed it. The first is the rule itself. The throne passes only to a man and only through the male line. And a woman born into the family doesn't add to the reserve, because the moment she marries a commoner, she leaves. Think about what that means over time. Sons keep the line going. Daughters exit. So the pool of heirs can do only one thing across the generations: shrink. It has no way to refill. A reserve that can only ever drain is not a reserve. It's a countdown. The second step is the one almost no one remembers. In 1947, in the wreckage after the war, Japan's imperial family was dramatically downsized for reasons that, at the time, made complete sense. Money was short, and a slimmer monarchy was part of the post-war settlement. 11 entire branches of the family, the exact cousins who had always served as the backup, were cut loose and turned into ordinary citizens. The bench was emptied in a single stroke. It looked like sensible budgeting. What it actually did was pull the spare engines off the plane decades before anyone would notice the plane was flying on one. Put those two steps together and the whole thing comes into focus. A rule that guarantees the reserve keeps shrinking, and a one-time decision that deleted the reserve that was left. Neither was crazy. Together, they turned a 1,500-year institution into a line held up by a single teenager. So how do you refill a system that's down to its last spare? Every monarchy that has faced this has really had only three moves. The first keeps the rule exactly as it is, the throne stays male, and simply works to keep the pool of men deep. Saudi Arabia has run this way for generations, the crown passing from brother to brother across the many sons of its founder, because the reserve of eligible men is enormous. For centuries, France did the same by law. When a royal line ran out of sons, the crown jumped sideways to the nearest male cousin rather than pass through a daughter. Japan's version is stranger, because it already threw its spare branches away in 1947. So the plan is to invite their male descendants back in by adoption. It changes nothing about the tradition, which is exactly why it can pass. But it's a patch, not a repair. It still depends entirely on those men having sons, so it postpones the countdown rather than stopping it. And these are men who have lived their whole lives as ordinary citizens, which is why public support is limited. In one 2025 survey, about a quarter were in favor. The second move lets a woman sit on the throne, but only as a bridge, with the line returning to a male heir afterward. And Japan doesn't need to look abroad for this one, because it has done it 8 times already. Those 8 past empresses were exactly this: women who held the throne to cross a gap, then handed it back along the male line. It has deep precedent, and it is a smaller break than it sounds, but it buys a single generation. It does not refill the reserve. The shortage simply returns at the next handover. It is a bridge, and a bridge only spans the gap it stands on. The third move is the deep one, the road most of Europe has already taken. Let the eldest child inherit, regardless of sex, and let the line pass down through them. Sweden went first in 1980 and did something striking. It applied the change backwards, so the king's firstborn, a daughter named Victoria, became heir over her younger brother, who had already been given the title. The Netherlands, Norway, Belgium, Denmark, and Luxembourg followed. Britain coordinated the same change across 16 countries in 2013. This is the only one of the 3 that ends the shortage for good, because the pool finally stops draining. Daughters and their children stay in. And that is exactly its cost, the heart of the whole fight. It ends the unbroken male line. To those who believe that specific line, 126 emperors, father to son, is the very thing that makes the throne sacred. This doesn't preserve the institution. It replaces it with a different one that happens to share a name, and there is no precedent for it in Japan. So look at the real shape of the choice. 2 of the 3 moves, a deeper bench of men or a woman reigning as a bridge, keep the male line intact, and both only by time. Only the third actually stops the countdown, and it does so by ending the very thing the first 2 exist to protect. There is no option that keeps everything. So come back to that one 19-year-old standing at the end of 15 centuries. He isn't fragile because anything is wrong with him. He's fragile because the system around him quietly stopped keeping spares, first with a rule that could only ever subtract, and then with a single budget decision that swept the reserve away 79 years before the bill came due. And that is the part that reaches far beyond one throne or one country. Every institution that has to outlive the people inside it faces this exact problem. The company that depends on one irreplaceable engineer, the system that runs on one aging piece of software nobody knows how to rebuild, the supply chain with a single factory behind it. Redundancy always looks like waste right up until the moment it's the only thing that would have saved you. So the real question here, was never really about kings and queens. It's the quietest question an institution can ask itself, and the easiest one to put off. What are we down to just one of? And what happens on the day we lose it?